afternoon, and welcome to day 13 of the 2021 Milwaukee Film Festival presented by Associated Bank. It's day 13 of our 13th annual festival. It's our golden festival day. I don't know. There's a joke there. As you've seen, you are here for this conversation surrounding resilience, restorative justice, and what happens next. And I'm really excited to hand the stage over for that conversation. But first, a little housekeeping. First, you have probably seen our Double Up Challenge. We have been challenged by Susan and Bob Michelet very generously to raise now $75,000. If we do that by the end of the festival, which is on Thursday, they will double that donation. You can help us out in a couple of ways. You can text double up to 44321. You can go to mkefilm.org/donate. Or if you're not already a Milwaukee Film member, come join the Milwaukee Film member family. mkefilm.org/members will get you to all the perks and benefits that our members enjoy. And most importantly, now, through the end of Thursday, those dollars will be doubled. Members get lots of goodies throughout the year, free movies, but most importantly, members and donors, supporters like Susan and Bob, help our nonprofit continue to provide programming like this for you for free, and to make sure that folks get paid for their time as well. So if you have even a little bit to give, now is the time, because those dollars get doubled. And we do have a raffle for a private screening at the Oriental Theater when it reopens later this summer, that every donation will be entered to win, or to possibly win. So why not donate now? This event kind of arose out of viewing these two films, Spring Valley and When Claude Got Shot. And the sort of core subjects who pick up resilience and restorative justice work, Vivian Anderson and Claude Motley, are joining us basically to have a frank conversation with one another about these topics. I will say, before we went live backstage, they already got started. They have so much to kind of share with one another, to inform one another's work, but also to help inspire the rest of us to find our places in kind of continuing to make improvements in how we treat one another at sort of a very basic level. So I'm going to get out of the way, turn the screen over to Claude and Vivian. If you've got questions or comments, throw them in the chat where you're watching. They will make their way on screen, and we'll try to get them in the fold. But without further ado, Claude and Vivian.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
How you doing?
Listen, I guess we're going to get it started, and I do have something that I just really want to kick us off with. People can see my work, and it's a part of stepping in, right? But if I was to ask you, or to say what I was so moved about with your story, is if you can take us back, not to the moment. I want to know the moment that you said yes, that you were going to sit down with the young man.
Well, it really wasn't. Let me just put it like this. You know, after going through the whole situation, obviously me sitting down with him was a couple of years after the event. So when I was in there, I was so involved in the case and so involved in the situation. And in fact, you know, when we were going through the juvenile court, I actually talked to the family, the other family, and things like that. So I really understood the whole concept of who that person was, and in my own way, in my own, you know, what I can actually glean from talking and things like that. So at that point in time, I really understood that there was a bigger issue here that wasn't just about that young kid, you know. And I also knew that if there was anything, I would never want to be in that young man's shoes in no kind of way, as in not only making the bad choice, but also suffering the consequences for the bad choice he had after the fact. So I, you know, I mean, empathetically, I was like, you know, there's only so much suffering that one person can actually do, you know. And so after the sentencing, and after sitting back and understanding the concept of what this boy's future is about to be like, and how hard and what kind of rough road he's going to have before he was able to actually embrace what he did and try to turn his way around, I knew that I was going to be probably heavy on him, as in guilt, as in, always regretting that what he did to me. And I knew that that wasn't my part in this whole role. My part is not about trying to hold someone down or to have anger, hold anger and things like that. My part was, I just really felt that my part was to, get out, everything happened, everything that was part of that. I had to work on me, and I really wanted him to work on himself, and this also comes from, the experience of having family members, friends, just people go to prison and understand the whole, how that affects a family, how that affects, the person, just the community. I understand that whole thing. So at one point in time, once those things about my crime is over, it's time to heal. It's time to grow. It's time to learn. And so at that point in time, I knew, if the opportunity arose, I wouldn't have any hesitation of talking to him and try to, at least be that one person to say, hey, listen, that guilt that you might want to hold on to, don't hold on it for me. Hold on to it so that it can drive you to be a better person.
Yeah. I know people see my work, and for those who don't know, like, I showed up in a moment after there was an assault on October 26, 2015, where a girl was slammed out of her desk by a school resource officer. She was she was arrested, and a classmate that stood up for her was arrested. And I will never forget the girl who was arrested alongside her. They asked her, would they let her go from this adult facility? She wasn't even in a juvenile facility. She was in an adult facility because we hadn't raised the age to 18 yet, where a child can be held as a juvenile. At 16 here in South Carolina, 16, they see you as an adult. So we're going to talk about adultification of children later. But I remember they said, well, why did you stand up? And I will never forget the words, and I always get emotional, so forgive me. She said, because I knew she had no one else. And that was a cry. How many kids out here are doing things because they feel like they have no one else? And how many kids are being raised by parents who had no one else? And how many parents were raised by people who had no one else? And so when I was looking at your story and I look at the work I do, it really is about, like, one of the things that I was like, you had me up for days. It's like, you made me, you really don't know, you're in my head more often than not. I get to keep seeing humans.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, and we get to have some real conversation around race, class, gender, all the things. I'm very clear that the fact that I even tried to figure out time to talk to the officer who was involved, that a lot of Black folks were like, no, he's an officer. But I was like, I'll bear it, because as long as he's in this world, he's going to keep coming across Black folk. And if there's something, and the way you work through your journey was so inspiring. What I loved most is that moment in your film when you stopped and you actually admitted that you were angry, because you actually denied it for quite a while.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, the thing about it is it is a journey, and it was a growth. I mean, it doesn't, when you're going through life, you're always fighting against what you're being told and what you actually see in reality, and you always are thinking that things are idealistic and these are the systems and this is the reason why they're in place, and so on, so forth and so on. But there is no one size fits all. You're always growing and reapplying and reassessing. If you're not doing that, then that's when you're stuck. That's when you are, I hate to say it, that's when the bin feels, when you just do not want to accept anything. You want to just go ahead and continue on and just say, hey, listen, I was right, and I'm just not going to listen to all the justifications and everything and the facts. I'm just going to continue forward. But listen, before I just want to ask you, what got you into this? Because for a person to just pick up and come down to South Carolina from New York, I'm just interested, where is your beginning? Where did you start, and how did you get into this field?
So I was living in New York, and I was working with an organization, one of my little sister mentors. I love this woman with all my heart, Joanne Smith. I was working with Girls for Gender Equity, and we were doing push-out work, the criminalization of Black girls, Monique Morris. We were doing all this stuff, and it was all theoretical, right? We're telling these girls these things, and then we saw the video. right? Everything happened. And I was like, I was with Black Lives Matter at the time. I'm doing this community work. We're standing for Eric Garner. We're standing for Michael Brown. We're standing for Trayvon Martin. We're standing for all these folks. And we're showing up when bodies are actually lost. And I was like, what happens? This girl is not dead. Like, she didn't die, but we can still stand for her. So I was like, we have to go. And I came down looking to like really be in part of a larger protest movement that when I got here, that really didn't happen. And so as I started talking to folks, I started realizing like there was so many layers and layers. We only see that 10, 15 second, whatever shows across social media, we want to live there. And I didn't want to live there. And I really was determined to like, what does it take to have these girls have thriving lives after such a traumatic event? And so my 2-day trip turned in me relocating my life to the South so I can elevate the Southern Black girls' voice in this national conversation. And I was very determined. I'm not going to be somebody who just pops in and pops out. If I'm going to stand and say I'm about this community, I got to be with this community. I just can't pop in and out. And so I was already doing this, different levels. I worked with the YMCA, so I was already doing community stuff. But this took me, and it allowed me to do my own healing journey because one of the things that happened was that I got to, in this whole process, I have a brother who I haven't even talked to, and that literally had me talking to Ben Fields, and that's the conversation most people don't know. I figured if I can forgive my brother who abused me, I could actually be in relationship with anybody in the world because I don't get to decide who gets restorative justice, who gets retribution. That's not my place. I am not God. But for me to heal, there's some stuff I had to let go, and I had to like be in a conversation. Like if I see everybody as human, the same way I see my brother as human, I get to see everybody on this planet as human. It's going to take some work. It ain't always easy. Let's be very clear. It ain't always easy.
It ain't. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. And it's one of the things there's a couple things that we shared that you said in the movie. And one of the things was the financial issues. I definitely had to go through. I have still going through it. That stuff is going to be with me for a while. But I know you talked about it about when you moved down there. That it's not easy just to pick up. It's a love affair. You know what I'm trying to say? To actually say, I'm going to, listen, I'm going to put that on you, God, or however you want to actually describe that, and to say, because I'm doing your work, and so just talk about how you were able to just really in those darkest moments and things like that, how you were, what inspired you to push through?
I think one of the things is that I really feel like I'm being obedient. There are days where I just don't get it. I don't feel like there are days I question myself. I don't have all this stuff. I just feel like, okay, if God keeps saying it, I'm supposed to be doing it. I don't know if it's right, wrong, good or bad, but I'm just going to keep. And I think one of the things is that I remember being that girl in the classroom. I remember being that girl where I was looking for a safe haven because home was not always safe for me at a certain point. My mother loved me to death. And because of economic injustice, my mother had to work a lot. And so one of the things is like my mother had to work a lot. And it's one of those things where it's just like, hey, she has to go. She's entrusting us to folks. It's not that she was trying to like create harm for us. It was just like, hey, especially because we're all related, so it shouldn't be harm, right? But because there were generations and generations of harm before that, and if we're really going to talk real talk, and if we're really ready to be in some real conversation, there's generational harm that people don't know about. And that Vegas rule, this new plan, this new rule of Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Let me tell you about the Southern truth. What happens in the house stays in this house. So even when you look to get support, you had to. So I was muzzled for a long time. And so when I saw that, something triggered in me, something, I don't know, I still can't explain it to this day, where now I'm in Florida working with cases in Florida. I'm in different places and people are like, why you keep moving? I said, COVID ain't, they was like, it's COVID. I said, COVID didn't stop the harm, so we're not going to stop the healing. And so I'm determined that somebody held on to me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
And I know more than anything, it was God that held on to me, and not trying to be like this religious freak, but somebody saw me, not my behavior, because I was like, hey, I did some things. So I would be like, hey, you can't have my cell phone either. I would have been that child, but somebody stopped and said, okay, we're not going to introduce more violence.
Right.
I want to hear what's going on so we can heal that and then figure out the solutions later. Not just react. We don't even respond to behavior anymore. We react. That's why the nurse, the woman who actually was assaulted and ended up like, you met the right one on the wrong day. Right? I'm sorry to talk about it, but I'm like, bro, okay. Even I totally felt her.
Yeah.
Where her whole world shut down. She couldn't even see herself anymore, because she was like, my commitment was to heal people, and I harmed somebody. And when I do this work, it's because I want to make sure she's healed as well. Right. So it's so many folks. And so when I saw your story, I was loving it. I love your wife, by the way. Love your wife. I love your wife, because she's like, I'm gonna hold you, but I'm not about to cripple you. What we're not gonna do is that. And that's the balance, that the way your story happened, there was such that fine line and balance, and y'all navigated it like everybody needs to see this. Everybody needs to see this.
Yeah. And the thing about it is that, we didn't sit back and think about it. We didn't sit back and really, try to go through this. And one of the things I tell people all the time, I give a shout out to Brad and Michelle, who actually edited the story. We did it for almost 5 years. And they pulled out the story. They pulled out that story to make sure that they showed who I am, and that, obviously, like you just said, this who I was, what I've done, who I am, and everything like that. We don't really have a whole truth. There's a bunch of layers to everything. I'm no angel, there's a lot of things that I did. And that's the reason why when I can say that I can, really just relate to Nathan, is because, there's a lot of things that me and Nathan have in common, and it's not all good. You know what I'm trying to say? But it comes a time when you have to realize it's not good, and you actually, make those choices and start to make smart choices, and not fall into your base thought processes of, of just evilness or whatever you want to call it. And I, one of the things that you said, and I just wanted to, thank you for sharing, about your, about the situation you grew up in and things like that. And I kind of, I get a gist of what you're saying, and it's true, because one of the things that I think that, and we were just going to talk about the adultification of kids. One of the things that I think that, a lot of these kids suffer from, and they don't really want to give it, they don't really want to tell you, is fear. They don't have a safety. They don't have a safety net that they're actually being raised up in. And if you're talking about safety as in the harming of their own bodies, if you're talking about safety as in economic safety, what we're going to eat and things like that, if you're talking about safety as in, just walking down the street without being harassed by police, if you're talking about safety, there's always a fact that we're always fighting that, and how does that messes with a psyche, a child psyche that's being developed? How did they actually come with that? So when you talk about a person that says, one of the things that just killed me about your movie, and about that one, that second, the police officer came in and was like, and I think he thought he was doing something well. He was saying, me, that can mean a lot of different things just by saying those words, and coming in your police officer uniform. Me. Yeah, I know you are the person that's going to abuse me. You're the person that's going to take me back, and I'm not going to have an opportunity to say my piece. You're not the person I was asking for. That meant a lot of different things. I know he thought that you were saying I'm being fair, or that's what he interpreted it later. But it also was an intimidating factor to a person that's already, afraid, probably have been abused and things like that just through life, you know. So, you know, so when I look at those things, me myself, and what you're talking about, you know, how me and my wife grew up in the projects also, you know, we are pretty much, you know, we're pretty much children of Milwaukee and all the things that come with a segregated city. You know, we are those kids, you know, but we strove to do what we can. Right now, she's about to do a closing for a John Doe case that she has against a police officer that shot three people in 5 years, and she's trying to get probable cause to get him charged. You know, that's what we do. That's what we do, and that's what we're going to go forward with. And so everybody does their part. And I really, like I said before, you know, we have to overcome the things that we have to do, but we have to show love when we look back. We can't transfer that anger, like you were just saying about those hidden things. That's transfer. That's the things that I feel that a person might suffer on the outside, and they bring that home, and they instill that on their children and things like that, because they're so angry and frustrated and hurt themselves. And we have to try to heal that up, you know.
Yeah, I want to go back to like when you talked about that moment when you like, I hear him saying, or I hear him talking about, you know me. I think that's one of the things we have to address. I think adults and ego. So he's like, you know me. But if you were really the adult in the room and not trying to make her the adult, and you saw a child, you would know the child and what she needed in that moment. And the way you approached her wouldn't have been with how you approached her, because you would have known her, right? In that moment, she needed somebody to see and know her. But you like, hey, you know me, I'm this cool thing. That ain't it. This girl needed somebody to be on her team. And once again, there was nobody on her team. We got a police officer, a teacher, a principal, an administrator. We got a class full of kids, and it took one other Black girl, right, to stand for her. Nobody was willing to see her. And all she was saying is like, what did I do wrong?
Right.
Tell me what I did wrong. But all he wanted was, well, you know me. Well, there's a lot of ways to know you, because you got a whole nother reputation over here about this and that. So like, you didn't walk in. I don't know who I'm interacting with right now. But if you really saw me and knew me, and that's one of the things I did love about how Garrett and Ariana and Jeff did the editing of this film, to like actually have us see her, because we never took time to see her. We like created the narrative that he created, but like this was really like, see me. Why? I actually want to learn. I don't want to leave the classroom. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Be in relationship with me. And I think that's another thing, when we actually have an opportunity to see human and human, we can be in relationship with each other. But if it's just like, oh, I was reading something earlier where people talk about ghosting, where I had to learn that term because I'm not on social media like that. I don't understand all those terms all the time. So I get to hold it. We ghost kids all the time. The minute we look at the minute the articles are written, so there's a 10-year-old girl here in South Carolina who was handcuffed by police. They call her a young woman. She's a 10-year-old girl. So we ghosted her childhood. It's not just even about adultification anymore. It's the race of girlhood, where we really don't see young children as children, especially Black and brown children. We don't see them as children. They're automatically adultified, because we come out the womb. I came out the womb and they were like, you're gonna be a strong Black woman. You came out the womb and they was like, you the man at the house. These are these things that, unfortunately, historical context, when we bring all that into it, and that's another thing that the film does, actually takes us through the 100 steps on the 100 steps on the 100 steps before. And even with your case, the way you went back and you were like, hey, I'm not trying to paint myself as an angel. I want y'all to know my journey. And I fought to get here. And I still am not going to treat him the way the system will want to treat him. Nathan is a boy. I could have easily been him. I had some other resources. I had some other people in my corner who saw me. Did not try to use me, but they saw me. Absolutely. And that's why those moments where I was like, when I tell you, I was like bawling for days. I had like 12 kids in the other room trying to do this youth development program. I was like bawling when he was like, I just want to show you I can walk. Like, he needed like somebody to see him, and like even that level. And I know it was hard because, like I told you, that was my biological brother.
Yeah.
We spoke 40 years later, and no, we don't speak today because just like Ben feels, if y'all not ready to own your stuff, I can't continue to put myself in spiritual harm way, right?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
know God's gonna work with y'all, but I find peace in it. I found peace in it. And that's what I found in you, where it's like, I may never step in this room with this boy again, but I have my peace. And I was just like, you continue to be in my head, even when I want to walk away, like somebody else will pick this up, but you are continually in my head because I was so moved and inspired by you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And, you know, and what you said is absolutely true. You know, one of the things I tell people all the time, because, you know, I mean, it's hard. It's, you know, I'm not even in your situation, just exactly what you said. It's not really about the other person. You know, I do care for him, but at one point in time, you have to know what's good for you, what's good for your soul, because you can't be, if you're poisoning your soul, you can't be anything for anybody else. You know, you can't be that example. You can't uplift anybody. You can't do anything unless you take care of your own soul. So if I sat up there and just held on to that hate and then thinking that I'm going to go over and help somebody else, that hate is still going to be in my soul. And I had to release that, you know, and, you know, and like I said before, I hope the best. You know, like I said, I'm kind of, we're kind of in touch with the mother, and I'm not sure how he's handling his situation. One of the worst things that happened in that movie, my situation, was, I asked for leniency. I asked for, him to have less time than what he got, and it was ignored. It was ignored because the systems. One of the things that I said I want to talk to you about is, when we look at racism and we talk about racism, we focus on the race part, but we don't really focus on the ism part.
Absolutely.
And that ism it's a distinctive practice, a system, or a philosophy. And you can apply that to a lot of different things, that philosophy that you have. So if you got a philosophy that kids are adults, that Black kids are naturally criminals and they're adults, when you could put that philosophy on them, you're going to have the results that Nathan actually had to suffer through, because that's how he saw him. And he even said it. I respect it, but I don't have the same thought process as you do, when he sentenced that boy. And it's like, we have to start thinking about community, our humanity, and everything that you were talking about.
I want to take a pause for a minute because
I
have a question for you, right?
Okay. Yep.
So here's my question. How are you handling being part of the system?
That's a good question. As in, the thing about it is that, and this is something that I looked at and I was thinking about when in your movie also. And I think it's a misconception that we always talk about. When we talk about the system, we're talking about how the system as in what we idealize, as in a system of safety, of protection, a system of, policing, to make sure that, humans do the right thing and everything like that. I'm a lawyer. I am part of the system regardless. Well, I'm going to be a lawyer, hopefully I pass my bar, whatever.
We claim that you're a lawyer.
All right, exactly. But, and so that's the field I work in. I believe in the rule of law, and I believe that it's necessary to have to shape society, to shape how we actually go about life every single day, But then we have the application of the system, and that's where we fall short. That's where we get the isms, and that's the problem that I have. The thing about it is that even in that situation that I was talking about with Nathan, I was saying, hey, listen, where do we go? When do we we go from punishing a person from doing something to actually going into revenge? When is a person going to be a situation where he's going to learn his lesson, he's turning his life around, and he's ready to go ahead and try to be a productive person in society? And where do we just want to continue to hold on to our anger and just make sure that person just is buried underneath the jail? And that's what I have a problem with. So when you say, how do I feel about being part of the system? I don't have any problem about being a part of the system in which we're trying to uphold and shape society and do thoughtful things, you know. So you're gonna have me going on a rant on this one.
No,
Just
I want you to talk more about the isms, and I asked that question because I want you to be unapologetic. Because I'm clear, I would want you in my corner, in my courtroom all the time. And
Thank
so
you.
there are times where we say it's only this or that when we look at justice, but somebody who's lived it, and like, people can talk about restorative justice. I can talk about it and I can like hold circles. You live that walk daily.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
you in the room, and I want you to talk more about the isms and the philosophy and how that guides not just you. Even I watched Kim through the movie, right? I watched it. I watched your kids are growing up learning that there's a thing called restoration, even if you hadn't taught them words.
Right.
So I do want you to talk more about that.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I was, you know, that blew my mind, and I stopped the movie and I went to go research it, was this kid got arrested for a crime of disturbing school. This thing is put in 1917, and the thing about it was that, you know, one of the crimes that we talk about laws being a living, breathing thing that works with our society, that changes and things like that. But yet and still, they made this law based on this guy. And let me just walk through this real quick. This guy, this guy who saw someone flirting and didn't like it. Now, he's not in the situation. He's not one of the people that's part of it. He saw somebody flirting and he didn't like what he was seeing. So he went ahead and got whatever he did to pass this law that's so vague that the people can't even explain what they're doing, because just by seeing it, that person is guilty of it. And then we start to rolling into what the laws or what the police are allowed to do. And we have so many laws like that on the books. You know, and even one of the resource officers in your movie said that they call it blanket laws. Are you kidding? Blanket laws? So that means they're so vague that you could just throw a blanket over it, over a person. That person is guilty wherever he wants to run. As long as that blanket gets on him, he can get. And so now, as you look at something like that, that's when we talk about the application. That's when we talk about what makes you mad, because then they went ahead and took this blanket law, took it to the 1960s, and went ahead and used it so they could suppress the Civil Rights Act of those kids at that point in time. You know, and then, you know, and now you get this law in which these kids are being violated. These kids are getting violated. That girl was assaulted by that police officer, and he had the absolute nerve to say, hey, you know what? That's the lesser of the evils. I could have went ahead and clubbed her. I could have went ahead and put the gun on her. I could have that. I was being humane by assaulting her in that way, because she could have got it worse. You know, the thought process of that, of how we're applying laws and how we're trying to sit up there and say, and that's why I say when we're talking about shaping society, when you shape society wrong, you get these Ben Fields, you get the people who are looking for opportunities, because that's when you talk about the isms. The isms are the situation when you have a philosophy, and when they see a black person, they don't see a black person because that black person is black. They see a black person because that person is the opportunity so that they can go ahead and apply their ism. They can go ahead and put their philosophy on that person. That person is
say that
wrong.
one more time for anybody taking notes. I want you to say, I'm for real though. Say that one more time. So anybody is watching, I don't always want people to just watch and listen. I want them to take away and research. I want you to say that again so they get the come from, right? So the context of this. So say that again.
When that cop, when you talk about racism, he was actually having a philosophy or thought process when he came into that room and saw that girl. And when he saw that situation, he had that philosophy, his ism. And he didn't see that girl just being black. He saw his opportunity to apply his ism to that race. And he applied that ism to that girl, and he assaulted that girl in that situation. And, you know, you can come back after the fact and say whatever you want as your justification, because that's the reason why we have these blanket laws in which allows these police officers to go ahead and justify anything that they can do, you know, qualified immunity and things like that. This blanket that gives you carte blanche on whatever you want to do. But the fact is that we see this. This is reality. This is life. And that's a young girl, and that's a dude that's sitting up there trying to, push 500 pounds of weight and everything like that. And he's in a freaking high school. He wants to apply that philosophy on that girl, which, I mean, listen.
No, one of the things he and I like went back and forth with, and we actually, I don't know if it was ever caught on camera, but it might have been on camera, but not edited, but our one-to-one, my whole thing was for him to admit when you walked in that room, you did not see a child.
Right.
Because of all the stuff, your philosophy, your ism, this is what I'm trained to do, all those things, you didn't see a child. But because of how you put it, and I'm going to use your terms, because of these isms and this philosophy, you applied race to it. Because we can honestly say, if it was a white child, I asked him those questions, right?
Right.
So you walked in, you didn't see a child. And he has this term that he talks about, because of his position and him as a, officer, there's only criminals and victims. So you walked in a room, you didn't see a child, you saw a criminal, and everybody else was victim. So once again, the eraser of childhood, that girl was no longer a child, not even about being adultified. You just saw a criminal. So everything else about her is erased. So when you walked in and said, you know who I am, you refused to see who she was. And that's why your conversation around the isms and the philosophies, and we get to talk about class, because it's also, I'm very clear, Naya didn't get that same treatment because your mother would have came for her. But you did to a child who was in foster care, who is the state protecting her. So who's coming after you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we pick and choose. We pick, I believe that's the way when we look at, and I think some of the work I've been doing for the last couple of years, there's no coincidence about all the cases. And it's either a state taking care of a child, or a child is coming from a home where there's a lot of trauma, where they're not doing anything differently than the other kids. They just have the least amount of protection. They have the least amount of people who can immediately stand for them. Now, we'll all come. We find out about it, we all come. But in that immediacy, they don't have people that can stand for them.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, like I said, this is really refreshing to talk. I had a question for you, and this was about your conversation. We're talking about the restorative justice. How did you feel in those conversations when you were talking to them? Because one of the things that it seemed like to me, it seemed like you all were throwing terms at each other, but it seems like what you were saying and what he was saying, they were so unrelatable that they were really just clashing. What was your goal? How did you feel when you sat across that table and talked to him for the first time?
So to be honest, I was like, okay, Lord, I really didn't understand how I would, I thought there was something, I thought I was just about to come at him. And then something came over me and I was like, if I do that, I can't get to where it needs to go. This man is still going, we can get into it and never see each other again. But this man is still attached to Black girls. He's still attached to Black women. And if we walk away and it didn't happen overnight, am I really ready to do this work? So I had to challenge myself, and we had to take breaks. I had to walk away. There was moments where I had to walk away. And there's times when I'm like, I question myself. Am I being too nice? Am I being this? But I was like, I literally half the time I never saw him. I saw all the Black women and girls he was attached to. And as long as you're still there, it's irresponsible for me. It's like knowing it's half the battle. I can't just walk away. It ain't the most comfortable position for me. There are times when I'm like, dude, you're tripping, right? You straight up tripping. And then there's times when I was like feeling guilty because I was like, I can see his humanity, but I can't make you see your own humanity. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're not speaking today. I'll text and say, how you doing? There's no response. And most of it because I know you still have Black women and girls in your life. And I don't know the harm that they've experienced where they don't hold you accountable for how you show up. But in those conversations during this time that we were filming, and so I'm going to go back to your question, in those times that we were filming, it was a lot of prayer. I ain't gonna lie, and everybody can say that's okie doke or whatever. But I'm also one of those people where it's like, if I can do it for my brother, who created this personal harm for me.
Right.
It messed my, like, I was jacked up for a whole lot of years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who am I to say who gets it and who don't get it?
Yeah.
So if it was, you know, the same way I feel like his partner who's on trial right now, who's on his partner that was in the room, the other officer who's on trial right now, a Black man who's under investigation for 5 to 6 sexual assault charges in that school. No, it's not just about a Black or white thing. These are children. And it's like, what do we have to do to stop the harm? And sometimes we got to put ourselves in the lion's den to tame the lion. And that's how, like,
absolutely.
So those conversations, they weren't always easy. Sometimes I came home and I cried in my husband's arms and I was like, I'm a punk. I'm a sellout. I shouldn't be talking to him. I'm doing something wrong. I'm doing something wrong. But God would tell me, yep, you got to get up tomorrow and go and have this conversation. And I trust my God source. I trust my spirit. I trust my ancestors. And my ancestors went through way more than me. So if it's me sitting across from this white man and telling him, you know, you're full of it. And even if I'm not arguing with him, because I think that was a lot of things people were expecting me to go at it, he not going to hit me. He was expecting that.
Right.
So I'm not going to bring you what you expect. I'm going to come on a whole different way. So that's how I was able to get through those conversations. I had 100 conversations in my head at one time.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't know what's going to happen when you get there, you know, and like you said, he definitely had his plan of how he was going to act in those situations. You know, one of the things that, you know, listening to him when he was, you know, giving his reality and his testimony, I guess he was sitting up there saying that he used to play basketball. You know, one of the things that, you know, that really strikes me oftentimes, and especially when you see something like this, is that they say things that think they qualify themselves, you know. And you were talking about him around Black women and Black women, his lives and everything like that. You know, he even went back to high school and talked about him playing in the projects of basketball and things like that, you know. And the thing about it is that, you know, he felt that you know, he felt that he was in a dangerous thing, because the thing about it is, it wasn't just the people that he was going into. If you say I'm going into the project, you're going into a situation in which you understand that there's no investment in the area that you're going into. There's no investment in the people. There's no equality. They know that these people are, as he was feeling, I had to go into that place. So he felt that he came from somewhere to go into this place that he had fear, and he said it, you know, nothing really happened to me or nothing like that. But the thing about it is that when you have that fear, you feel like you're conquering it. You know, you feel that I can handle this situation, you know, and that resonated with him. He liked that thought process, you know, not thinking. And he knows also, you know, I tell you right now, this is one thing that I tell people all the time. When you erase our history, when you go ahead and tell lies and fables and things like that, and knowing good and well that those things did not happen, when you erase our history, you're erasing your history too, you know.
Yeah,
and
so I'm going to challenge that just a little bit. What I think, and I'm going to like take a ball, so ACL.
Go ahead, run.
No, I'm like ASL. I'm going to let them do what they do, because they got to do some switch offs.
They got to switch.
And I want to be like very respectful that they thank you so much for working with us.
Absolutely.
One of the things is that he actually picked up his own history. I'm going in these neighborhoods. I'm like, when he was like, you know who I am. I'm another savior for you. And so what it did was challenge, like, no, I'm the good white guy. I'm the good white one. You're supposed to bow down to me. I'm not the master that beat you. I'm not the master that do this. How are you? How dare you, Black girl, not respond to my every command? So as he talked about, like, I was afraid, but they accepted him. And then it just grew like, oh, maybe I am the superior that they say, because they're allowing me in. And I think those are some of his like things that's working in his head. Like, he's like, listen, I still see y'all as, you know, for lack of better words, because I know that he has said we all the NIGGAs to him. We all the things. Right. He still says it to this day. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think he's holding on to the history, and the history tells him, because he hasn't done his own healing, And because he hasn't aspired to everything he wanted to be, and that's why I got to lift all those weights, he got to do all that stuff, prove himself. That's why I got to bully kids, because I still got to prove myself. You still trying to prove yourself that you're superior to everyone. And I'll be darned if a black, especially a young black girl who ain't came from nothing, not gonna obey me. And I
agree.
So that philosophy that you talk about in those isms, that's what was working. I love the way you framed all that stuff.
and I agree with you, and I do agree with you. But the thing about it is that, you know, I played, you know, I mean, I played all over Milwaukee. You know what I'm trying to say? And I ain't never seen no white boy get beat up on the basketball court for just being white. You know what I'm trying to say? So the thing about it is that that fear that he had is only his own fear. You know, I had fear at basketball courts and things happening just as much as he's had, you know, for situations that's not because I'm white, you know, it's because so the thing about it is these are things that they make up in their own heads. And you know, that and the thing about it is that it's a like you said before, when it comes down to how he feels about himself, he's already elevated himself. He's already thinking that I'm, you know, I conquered that. You know what I'm trying to say? I overcame that, you know, and I can continue to do it because I'm superior in that situation. You know, listen, and that's just my thinking, my philosophy, things like that. But the thing about it is that you start to looking at a trend. You start to seeing that trend. You start to seeing the situation. And I really was, you know, taken aback by the fact that, you know, like you just said before, he still has people in his life, but he has not ever dealt with whatever he had to deal with. He's telling himself his own story, but he needs to be honest, and he hasn't really dealt with the reality of who he is personally. You know what I'm trying to say? And like you said, you know, and for him to be doing what he's doing, still working, still training people, still putting that philosophy, still putting that ism into other people's heads, and being and then one of the things that was it was sickening to me was how he was being so supported by people who never been in that situation before in their life. He was being so supported by a person that, you know, just want to go ahead and blame children. And I'm just trying, and I listen, I'm not trying to be an apologist for children that do wrong. That's not my point. But what I'm trying to say is that what's our responsibility? We also have to have a responsibility, and he needs to, you know, deal with his own responsibility. We need to deal with our shortcomings, and we all need to deal with this as a community, and not sit up there and just point the finger and say, hey, listen, we can just get rid of them bad kids. Everything's going to be all right. No, I'm going to be the same person. You're going to be the same person. She's going to be the same person. And we all have to deal with our shortcomings and work with them and not just go ahead and start blaming.
Yeah, because I love that you said that, because one of the concepts is like, if we remove blame, fault, shame, and all those things and really talk about who's responsible. I remember, and I'm one of those movie people, right? I love movies. So watching Selma, but they were doing the speech that that Martin Luther King did when Jimmy Lee was killed. And he said, who killed Jimmy Lee? And that sits in my spirit all day. He said, yes, the officer that shot him, but also the officers that stood by and watched. Also the people who never got up to vote. Also the people who are refusing to vote. Also this. And it was like, we all hold a responsibility, not blame or shame, but we also, if we're going to call a child a bad child, we have to say, what's my responsibility in it? Even if I don't have kids, have I gone to the school board meeting to make sure all the kids getting the same kind of textbooks? If I'm not looking at that, what am I doing? If I'm calling this child bad from like breaking into everywhere, have I made sure there's enough programming around the community and like, what's my role without, like, what's my responsibility outside of blame? I think we're like, that wasn't my fault. That wasn't my fault. But it's like, it takes I saw a quote at a school, and it says, when a child doesn't feel the embrace of a village, it will burn it down to fill its wrong.
That's wonderful.
If we are not letting children feel warm, they gonna give it to us, right? And we gotta say, what is our role versus that parent over there or this over there? What can we do to have it look different? And I think that's some of the work that guides me, because I'm like, I'm on this planet. God bless me to be on this planet. I wake up every morning, and every day I wake up, how do I want this planet to look different than the way it was yesterday? And that's my commitment.
Absolutely. And we all have a role, like you just said. We all have a role, and we all have a lane. We got to do the best we can in our lane. Not asking everybody to solve every single problem.
Absolutely.
Just solve the problem. Just solve the problem that's in front of you. Just solve the one that's at your doorstep. That's all we asking. That's all I ask. You know.
Right. And sometimes it's as simple as like just smile at people.
Man, say hello. Say hello.
Don't be like, it don't have to be a lot. I'm not asking anybody to pack up and move across country. I'm not asking anybody to do that. No, but there's some things. There's a child in your house. Sometimes the Vegas rules don't work in families. Yep. There's a child that needs to be healed. And like, really, let's start looking at children as children and not talking about this, and already making them these grown folks that need to already know some stuff. But there's some grace, and there's a different from, it's not about, one of the things that I really want folks to understand from both the movies is like, we're not saying children don't get to be held accountable. We're saying everybody don't get to be punished for growing up in a world that wasn't even prepared to have them in the first place, right? So it's not about always punishing, but people get to be held accountable, and we're not taking that away. You get to be held accountable. It's just like, but we don't always have to be punitive in all the ways that we hold people accountable. You know,
and I know we're probably running up on the clock right now. I think it's pretty close, but we ran off.
I can talk to you forever.
But you know, one of the things that I tell people, and I tell people, I hope they take from our movie, is people can think differently. They can think. You know, we don't have to always think the same way, as in things that have not worked, and continue that thought process, because we don't have to think about it. We can just allow it to happen. We can think differently, because once we change our minds, then our actions will follow. If we change our mindset and we try to look for different ways to have solutions and things like that, actions will start to follow along, and we'll start acting toward our mindset. So you're exactly right about what you're saying about, you know, seeing things out there and doing. But first, you know, have that empathy, have something in your heart to say, we need to change something. You know, we need to change how we think about children. You got to change how we think about our society, of what we want our society to look like. If we're going to talk about America, the United States of America, we all got to be united. We're all here, and we're not going anywhere. And we all have to start thinking about that. So
yeah, and it's a whole lot of healing that needs to take place, because hurt people can't lead a healed world, right? So I'm gonna have to deal. If I'm unhealed, I can't even like move to it. So it's have to be the both hand. Like, well, like that was my thing. I could see the hurt in him, and like you could see the hurt in this young man. We could see that, but like it took you to say, I was angry, but I'm gonna heal myself. I had to heal myself. I had to do some stuff. And although Ben didn't directly hurt me, I saw the system hurting so many people in certain ways, but I had to do some stuff before I can even address the system, right? And so I think that was part of the things that merged, where we could like, oh, I see humanity, and I see it because I see myself first. I'm not counting on anybody else to see me. I'm going to see me. That boy didn't see me. And that's what another thing where I saw something, and we'll talk about it on another day at another time, because I know we're running over, is that I really saw that moment where you were like, oh, I see me. Not just I'm like trying to like look at somebody, but it was like, he actually didn't see me. He didn't even know he hurt me.
Right.
I know. So now I have to go on myself and be with some stuff. Because a whole nother conversation, I really want to talk about you and your friend that was like going into the door, because that's restorative too. Y'all probably had a whole conversation nobody even knows about.
Me and him are like brothers. We talk every day. So.
But he's carrying some stuff, and you worked him through it, and you worked him through it, and that's restorative as well.
Absolutely. It's ripple effects. It's ripple effects to everything, you know, all these things, all this pain. It doesn't hurt just you. It hurts the whole community, or everybody around it. All those kids in that room were hurt. All, you know, that teacher, he probably is thinking about what could I do different. It's just everybody, you know. So
everybody played a role. Yep.
Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
don't know if people gonna jump back in. We just been talking like we're sitting there. We acting like we're at home and like
I know.
like
Let's
we're
have
about
some
to have
wine
a
or something.
course dinner.
We should have like a little wine or something like that, you
Right. I'm
know.
like, I don't know if we're about to have a dinner. Somebody got like got a whole grill going. I don't know.
Right. Well, listen, thank you. Like I said, thank you so much for your work. Thank you so much for caring the way you are and setting that example and giving those girls something to hold on to. It is amazing. And I wish you the best going down to Florida and going all across this country because you're going to be stretched. So, I'm praying for you and I really, I'm happy that we had this conversation.
Me too. And thank you for understanding that your story was way bigger than you, but it's so needed and wanted in this moment. Because I don't know, like one of the things we can always see your story and we got to fight against the system. You went in and said, no, we're going to see the humans, and you made everything connect. Like everything is like, and watching what happens. I don't think a lot of people look at the 100 steps after. All the stuff you're on your like 15th surgery, right? Like
I had like 10, like I think it's 12 surgeries I had there. So
yeah, like all the steps after you having to hold your children do it all, teaching them like we're not going, because they were angry, like we're not going to live with this anger. So all the work that it took for you after that, but being willing to do the work. So I just want to thank you for always being the voice in my head.
I appreciate that. So I don't know. Do we supposed to give a signal?
Yeah, I don't know.
The bad signal. Do we supposed
and
to?
Hi, audience. I'm sorry, we don't know.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure if we were supposed to give questions. We just were talking.
Yeah, I was waiting.
All
just
right.
say that. Bye.
Oh.